guy took us on this long chase. He says that it's not because he has any warrants. He doesn't have anything in the vehicle.
It was supposed to be just another quiet night in a sleepy corner of Corpus Christi. A quick stop for gas, maybe a drink, maybe a cigarette before heading home. The kind of place where nothing dramatic ever seems to happen. But sometimes, the most ordinary moments hide the darkest turning points. On a warm July night in 2004, a hardworking father stepped outside a convenience store to throw away a bag of trash, something he had probably done hundreds of times before. What happened next unfolded in seconds, yet its consequences would echo for nearly 2 decades, ending not only one life in a parking lot, but eventually another inside the walls of a Texas execution chamber. The man working the late shift that night was Pablo Castro, a 46-year-old father known by co-workers and neighbors as someone who rarely raised his voice and never avoided responsibility. To the people who knew him, Castro represented the quiet dignity of ordinary life. He worked long hours, cared deeply about his family, and treated customers with patience, even during the slow, lonely hours of the night shift. That evening had been uneventful. The small convenience store sat under the dim glow of aging streetlights, its parking lot mostly empty except for the occasional car pulling in for fuel or a late-night snack. Inside, the hum of refrigerators and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights filled the quiet space. Shortly after midnight, Castro stepped outside carrying a bag of trash. It was a simple routine task, one he had likely performed countless times during previous shifts. The night air was warm and still, and the streets around the store were nearly deserted. He walked across the dim parking lot toward the dumpster at the edge of the property. Nothing about the moment suggested danger, but someone else was already moving through the darkness. Approaching the store that night was John Henry Ramirez, a 20-year-old whose life had become entangled in drugs, impulsive decisions, and desperation. Ramirez had spent the night driving through the streets of Corpus Christi with 2 companions, Angela Rodriguez and Cristina Chavez. For days, the three had been drifting from place to place, their time consumed by substance use and the chaotic lifestyle that surrounded it. Sleep had become irregular, money had run out, and as the night stretched on, desperation slowly began to shape their decisions. Their thoughts turned to one simple objective: finding cash. It wasn't the result of a carefully planned crime. It was the reckless logic that often grows out of addiction, an urgent belief that the next fix matters more than consequences. As they drove through quiet neighborhoods and nearly empty streets, every gas station, every convenience store, every parking lot became a possible opportunity. The tension inside the car grew heavier with every passing minute. Eventually, their wandering search led them to the convenience store where Castro was working. At that exact moment, Castro had just finished tossing the trash into the dumpster and was turning to walk back toward the store entrance. Ramirez closed the distance between them quickly. What happened next unfolded with shocking speed. Without warning, Ramirez pulled out a serrated knife and launched into a violent attack. The calm of the empty parking lot shattered instantly as Castro was stabbed again and again in a brutal frenzy. The assault was relentless. In total, Ramirez stabbed Castro 29 times. Under the harsh glow of the parking lot lights, the hardworking father collapsed onto the pavement, gravely wounded. The violence had erupted in seconds, leaving almost no opportunity for Castro to defend himself. Within moments, his life slipped away in that quiet parking lot, where he had simply stepped outside to finish a routine task. But the cruelty of the moment did not end there. As Castro lay dying on the ground, Ramirez began searching through his pockets. The motive behind the attack became painfully clear: robbery. Yet the result was tragically meaningless. After committing such an act of brutal violence, Ramirez found almost nothing. The total amount he took from Castro was just $1.25. A human life had been taken for little more than spare change. A father, a worker, a man loved by his family, gone in a matter of seconds. After the attack, Ramirez rushed back to the car where Angela Rodriguez and Cristina Chavez were waiting. The tension in the vehicle was immediate. Their faces showed the shock of what had just happened, but fear quickly pushed them into action. The engine roared to life and the car sped away from the convenience store, leaving behind the dimly lit parking lot and the silent aftermath of violence. But instead of ending the night, their escape only fueled further reckless decisions. The adrenaline pumping through them kept the chaos alive. Over the next several hours, the trio continued driving through the city, attempting additional robberies. They stopped at gas stations, convenience stores, and other businesses they believed might offer quick money. Each failed attempt increased their desperation. Each encounter raised the risk of being caught. Employees began noticing the strange behavior. 3 individuals appearing nervous, moving quickly, and leaving just as suddenly. Witnesses described a car driving erratically through the quiet streets. Soon, small reports began reaching local police. At first, they seemed like unrelated incidents scattered across the city, but investigators would soon realize they were all connected. As the investigation unfolded, detectives in Corpus Christi began carefully assembling the timeline of the violent night. Surveillance footage from multiple convenience stores and gas stations revealed the same vehicle appearing again and again. Witnesses described the same nervous trio moving quickly between locations, their behavior growing more frantic as the hours passed. What had initially seemed like scattered reports soon formed a clear pattern. Police realized they were dealing with a group responsible for a string of robberies and attempted robberies across the city. And at the center of it all was the brutal killing of Pablo Castro. The investigation quickly gained momentum. Within days, authorities located and arrested Angela Rodriguez and Cristina Chavez. Once in custody, both women were questioned extensively about the events of that night. Their statements helped investigators understand exactly what had happened in the convenience store parking lot. They confirmed that the person who carried out the stabbing was John Henry Ramirez. The realization that the killer had escaped intensified the search. Law enforcement now faced the challenge of locating a fugitive who had already demonstrated extreme violence and who was now beyond the immediate reach of U.S. authorities. For the next 3.5 years, Ramirez lived on the run. Moving between locations, he avoided drawing attention to himself and constantly stayed aware that investigators were searching for him. Every unfamiliar face, every passing police car, and every knock on a door carried the possibility of discovery. Meanwhile, back in Texas, authorities continued tracking leads and gathering intelligence. Eventually, those efforts paid off. On February 20th, 2008, Ramirez was located near the U.S.-Mexico border. Law enforcement coordinated a careful operation to apprehend him without incident. After years as a fugitive, he was finally arrested and brought back to Texas to face trial. The courtroom atmosphere during the trial was tense and emotional. The case had deeply affected the local community, and many people followed every development closely. Prosecutors laid out the details of the crime in stark clarity. They described how Pablo Castro had been stabbed 29 times during a robbery attempt, and how Ramirez fled the country immediately afterward. Witness testimony, forensic evidence, and statements from Rodriguez and Chavez all pointed to the same conclusion. The evidence was overwhelming. The defense attempted to portray Ramirez as a young man shaped by addiction, hardship, and a troubled background. They argued that his actions were influenced by years of substance abuse and the chaotic environment surrounding his life. But the jury ultimately focused on the brutality of the crime. After deliberation, they returned a verdict. John Henry Ramirez was found guilty of capital murder. During the sentencing phase, the court weighed the severity of the attack and the circumstances surrounding it. In the end, the jury delivered the harshest punishment available under Texas law. Ramirez was sentenced to death. His accomplices also received prison sentences, reflecting their involvement in the events. Angela Rodriguez was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, while Cristina Chavez received a 25-year sentence. Ramirez was transferred to the Polunsky Unit, one of Texas's most secure death row facilities, where he would spend more than a decade awaiting execution. Over the years, he filed numerous appeals and legal challenges as his case moved through the court system. During this time, he also developed a deep relationship with a prison pastor, Dana Moore, turning increasingly toward religion and reflection, while living under the constant shadow of the sentence awaiting him. His case eventually reached the Supreme Court of the United States over a unique legal question. Ramirez argued that his pastor should be allowed to pray aloud and place hands on him during the execution, saying the practice was central to his religious beliefs. The ruling that followed reshaped execution procedures across the country, affirming that spiritual advisors could offer physical and vocal prayer if security allowed. But the legal debates did not change the final outcome of his sentence. On October 5, 2022, Ramirez was executed at the Huntsville unit in Texas. At 6:41 p.m., his death was officially pronounced. The case closed a chapter that began nearly 2 decades earlier in a quiet parking lot, when a hard-working father stepped outside to throw away a bag of trash and never returned. One impulsive act of violence had taken a life, devastated families, and set in motion a chain of consequences that would echo through courts, prisons, and communities for years. Stories like this force us to confront difficult questions about justice, accountability, and the irreversible impact of choices made in moments of desperation. If this story made you reflect on the consequences of crime and the long path of justice, Let me know your thoughts. Do you believe cases like this truly bring closure to victims' families? Or does the pain remain no matter what the justice system decides? Share your opinion in the comments. And if you want to hear more deep, true crime stories that explore the people, investigations, and legal battles behind the headlines, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story.